Have you ever caught yourself thinking, I wish I had that? I wish I looked like that. Why is everyone doing this or having that and I don't? If you've ever had one of those thoughts, let me tell you something. It's normal. I've fallen into the trap of comparison too. But I'll also warn you, comparison isn't just stealing your joy, it's stealing so much more. And sometimes it even stops you from becoming the person you're meant to be. So, let's talk about it. Welcome to the Roses and Real Talk podcast, where we grow through what we're going through. And we do this by sharing sweet moments, hard truths, stories of growth and grit. And it's all with me, your host, Autumn. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Roses and Real Talk. How are you guys doing? I'm feeling really, really good today. I feel like a sense of refreshment. I don't know. I feel like I have so much more clarity on Roses and Real Talk. After our last episode about waiting periods, I've just felt so ready to continue this podcast. I felt so much more enthusiastic about this podcast because I loved the topic last time, and it's made me so excited to continue to have great conversations. I do want to say today we're going to be introducing our newest segment, and it is called Rosebud Thorn. I've done a lot of these throughout middle school to high school, but I thought it fit the theme of Roses and Real Talk. The rose aspect of Rosebud Thorn represents what made you stop and smell the roses this week. A little twist on the traditional meaning of Rosebud Thorn. The bud is how are you growing? And then the thorn is what challenged your growth this week or as of recently. So I'm going to get started. I'll start with a thorn first because I kind of want to end up on a high note. So what challenged my growth this week or in this past few days? I think for me has been a little bit of imposter syndrome. I think a little bit of nervousness. I think when you're trying new things, obviously you're going to be nervous. And I think nervousness can be a good and bad thing, but I really think it means ultimately that you care about something. So I've been really nervous about doing this podcast, but every time I get on the microphone, I'm so enthusiastic and excited to film it and talk and edit it and post it. But a little bit of nervousness has been challenging my growth recently, but I'm pushing through it. How am I growing? I think I'm just growing in this podcast. I feel like I'm getting better with editing, with writing my scripts and writing my ideas down. I'm getting better at sharing my experiences and also intertwining that with my creativity. I love creating the podcast and the creative pieces that go into it. So that's how I'm growing. And then one thing that made me stop and smell the roses this week, I think, is going on a walk. I just went on a walk today and it was just so relaxing, and I enjoyed walking and just thinking about how far I've come. And as you guys know, I love reflecting, so that was a highlight. So that is our Rosebud Thorn segment. I'm going to try to do it at pretty much every episode at the beginning. Some days I won't. But that is the intro to Rosebud Thorn. I hope you all enjoyed. So today we are talking about comparison and why it is so much more than the thief of joy. I came up with this podcast episode one night when I was just laying in bed about a week ago, and I was just thinking about how comparison has affected me and can affect others. And while thinking about this, I thought about something people often glance over when they think about comparison. And that is, comparison is not only the thief of joy, but the thief of your individual purpose. And so I want to break this topic up into 3 parts. First, I would like to talk about individuality. When we naturally begin to compare ourselves to others, we are unknowingly asking for a replica of that person, of that experience, and we're stripping away our own individuality. I remember when I was younger, I would oftentimes compare myself to my peers, the way they dress, the way their hair was. Growing up, I was very girly girl. I wore boots with heels. I would wear skirts to school. And some of my peers who were girls would always wear cool jeans, like ripped jeans, or they would wear some cool sneakers. I remember as I got older, I began to compare myself. I was like, well, maybe I'm not dressing the proper way. Maybe I need to be wearing jeans and sneakers to school and stop wearing the things that I actually did enjoy wearing. And by comparing myself to others, I took away my own individual identity and fashion sense. I remember myself changing the way I would dress or kind of hinting that I didn't like the things that I did like, because I wanted to fit in with my peers. And to this day, I do kind of feel the repercussions of that. I feel as though those peak moments in middle school and early high school are a really great time to find your individuality. And by comparing myself to others, I kind of lost who I was in my fashion taste. And so this summer and just recently, I've been really trying to reclaim my fashion sense and the things that I like. But this just really goes to say there are dangers and trends in comparing yourself to others. Comparison can lead people away from their authentic self. And I think just be mindful when you are comparing yourself or thinking about what you don't have or what other people have. Next, I want to talk about your purpose / your journey. I think individuality and purpose go hand in hand. Everyone has their own individual plan, which leads to their purpose. When we fall into the trap of comparison, we ultimately alter our journey to our purpose. I feel like I experienced this shift or detour in my purpose before. I remember being in high school and comparing my friendships to other friendships I was seeing around me. In my school, there were big friend groups of 10 to 15 people, and I never had that many friends, I would say. I had good acquaintances, but I never had like that big friend group. And I remember I began to compare how many friends I had to that big friend group. And with that constant comparison, I delayed my purpose and my journey to find genuine friendships. I remember sometimes I would rush to call somebody my friend. I may have gained friends with some quotes around that, but they weren't genuine. And I feel like with that, it delayed my purpose and my journey to find genuine friendships. Instead, I would find friends that weren't in alignment with me. And so comparison ultimately clouded my judgment, and it made me focus on the things that don't matter. It made me think about the quantity over the quality. And I think with that, I harped so much on, I don't have this many friends, but I didn't really cherish the great friends that I already had and look for genuine friendships. Comparison can ultimately drift your focus from what matters most, and it's important that you hone back in what matters most so that you can be on your way with your journey. Lastly, I would like to talk about joy. Most people know the phrase, comparison is the thief of joy. I'm going to take this phrase literally and say I agree. I think with individuality and purpose, I think joy is embedded in all of those things. And in my experience, when I feel like I'm being as authentic as I can be, or when I feel like I'm actively walking my purpose, I feel joyful and accomplished. As I explained previously, when you begin to compare yourself to others, you take away your individuality and delay your purpose, which ultimately takes away your joy. I like to think of this as an hourglass. The more you feed into comparison, which is, the bottom half of the hourglass, the less of yourself you have, which is the top of the hourglass. And really the only way to, reset it is by pouring back into yourself and doing the things that bring you joy. And I could talk so much more about this topic. I can talk about conforming and blending in with the crowd, but that's an episode for another time. So let me know if you want to hear that. But now we've reached the point in the episode where we do our reflection question. I hope this episode really opened your eyes to how comparison can impact you. I know comparison is a natural thing, but I just hope that you think mindfully about what you're comparing, what you're consuming, and what you're saying to yourself on a day-to-day basis. So today, our closing reflection question is, where in my life am I comparing instead of appreciating? Write your answer down on paper, and if you feel comfortable, put it in the comments. Let's have a little chat. But either way, kudos to you for taking the steps needed to grow and to start realizing that you are special and that your life is just as exciting and meaningful as anyone else's, or as anything. And with that said, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Roses and Real Talk. I had such a great time. I hope this episode was super meaningful. And I hope to see you all for the next episode. Go check out the TikTok at roses.real.talk.p and go check out our shorts because we're going to start posting so much on YouTube shorts. So go check it out. With that said, thank you all for being here, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.